Hello, I'm Giants broadcaster John Miller at Oracle Park, and you're watching Bay Area Sports Wrap.
There's a long drive, way back in center field, way back, it is. Willie Mays just brought this crowd to its feet with a catch, which must have been an optical illusion to a lot of people. And Willie Mays gave this crowd of 52,751 an unforgettable sight.
In honor of Black History Month, we want to talk about one of the greatest baseball players of all time, Willie Mays. In a new book and in his own words, Willie shares his thoughts about the inspirations that guided him on and off the field and his unique and lasting place in American history. The man who's helping to tell his story is John Shea, national baseball writer for the San Francisco Chronicle and co-author of the book 24 Life Stories and Lessons from the Say Hey Kid. He got to spend countless hours with the Hall of Famer.
All right, alongside Marko Ukalovic, I'm Ryan Leong, and this time on Bay Area Sports Wrap, we're joined by the Dean of Baseball Writers in the Bay, and that's John Shea from the San Francisco Chronicle. John is like that rare baseball player. Instead of playing in four different decades, he's been writing for that long, 37 of which in the Bay Area, author of 5 baseball books, most notably 24 Life Stories and Lessons from the Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays. John, welcome to Bay Area Sports Wrap.
Well, hello, guys. I think this is my debut. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Marko had a burning question for you, by the way.
Well, not necessarily a question, but it's more of an observation here. If I didn't know you any better, John, I would have thought you were the opening act yesterday at the Def Leppard Journey Steve Miller Band concert at Oracle Park last night, because I swear you are a dead ringer for Steve Miller.
Wow. Grew up listening and watching. That's I never heard that one.
Well, it's so funny because I was with Alexander Irving, who you know, in the press box there. She had an extra ticket, and so it was so funny as he's ending his set. I looked at her, and I'm about to open my mouth to say, you know who Steve Miller looks like, and then she said it right as I looked at her, like, he looks like John Shea, and we just started laughing for like 5 minutes because we both had that exact same thought at the exact same time. So I just wanted to throw that out there for you.
That is hilarious. That's new for me.
Well, I think you found your doppelganger. I think that's a great compliment. So,
yeah. So either I'm aging well or I'm not aging well. I'm not sure which one.
I think you're aging well.
No.
All right. Well, anyway, John, first off, I wanted to start off by asking you your thoughts on the passing of your longtime friend, Willie Mays, back in June, and what is his legacy to the game of baseball?
No, thank you. I mean, Thursday was the Rickwood game, and he passed just before 3 o'clock on Tuesday, just a bit more than 48 hours before the first pitch. And it really stunned everybody because Dusty Baker visited him the day before on Monday and then flew to Birmingham on Tuesday. And he got off in Dallas on the way to Birmingham, and his phone was lighting up with the news on Willie. And he couldn't believe it. I mean, yeah, Willie has not been around the ballpark. He hasn't been mobile. He hasn't been able to see for the longest time, as you know. So he's been in bed, but upstairs it was always there, man. I mean, I visited him the Wednesday before the game. So what, 7 days, 8 days before the game itself, 6 days before he passed. And I just wanted to go by one more time before the game just to check in on him and say hi. And, hey, do you need anything from the game? I actually said that. I couldn't believe it. I had to kick myself. A T-shirt, a cap, as if Willie Mays couldn't pick up a phone and order 10 boxes of caps if he wanted them at no charge. And I'm say, yeah, I'll wait in line for you and get a hat. But you know what? When I left the room, I said, love you, Willie. And it's not something I normally do. He's not, and it just felt like saying it for whatever reason. It was an emotional time with Rickwood coming, and boy, oh boy, we got word, and it was just so stunning. And my first thought was, there's no way, because he always got up for the big game. On his birthdays, he would spend, hours or days or whatever it was to prepare mentally and physically for that moment so he can enjoy it, so others can enjoy him. And he did that throughout his playing career. He got, the All-Star games and game 1 of the 54 series. We know what happened there with the catch. So he always got up for the big games, the big days. And this one, it's like he took a pass. And I guess several days passed before I kind of realized, you know what? Willie Mays lived and played on his terms. I mean, he got everybody to Birmingham and then said, you know what? You guys take it from here. I'm good. And he checked out with no fuss. And that was Willie Mays. He didn't want people around sweating over him and crying over him. So with very little fanfare and very little attention, he passed peacefully. Renee Anderson, his beloved assistant, who is always with him at the events, was there with him, but really just some medical people. And that was it. And that's what Willie wanted. So, I as I always have since childhood, I salute Willie Mays.
Yeah, that's awesome. You've covered this guy really longer and know him better than any the media here really, the last 40 years. So to get this insight from you, John, we really appreciate and we like that, you gave us what you know about the man, the legend that is Willie Mays, and that we've all come to know and love. And so thank you, that we definitely wanted to open up with that because we know that you are the expert on that.
No, it's much appreciated. I mean, I'm lucky and fortunate and grateful that he accepted me into his world. I mean, he doesn't do that for many people. And I was, as the national baseball writer, the Chronicle and Examiner merged in 2000. And so we had 2 of everything. I went from Giants beat writer to national baseball writer. So I kind of stepped back more. And I had, from 1988, when I came back to the Bay, and I was, raised in Marin, but I went down to San Diego throughout the 80s, went to school, came back in 88. And it was 2 years after he had arrived back to the organization. So he was back in baseball in 86. He was brought back to the Giants in 86, and then I showed up in 88. So when he held court, and he often did in the clubhouse, you'd be silly not to be there. And so I just kind of soaked it all up, listened and watched and learned. And then every once in a while, I'd throw in a question among the veteran scribes and reporters and radio and TV personalities, whoever was in the room with them. And, I started writing about him, and he kept talking to me. So I imagined, I guess, that he was okay with what I was writing, because I would call him and I'd visit him. And then in 2005, I said, Willie, what about a book project? And, he didn't say yes or no. He just said, hey, would like to see a book project in classrooms. So it was typical Willie. Let's do something for the kids, young adults, people who kind of need to see the way in life. Which way do I go? Well, if I hear from Willie Mays, who could have gone all kinds of different sideways ways back in his childhood and playing days and whatever, and took the road that was quite pure, unlike maybe Mickey Mantle or some other folks playing at the time, didn't smoke or drink or any of that. He never even got ejected from a game in 22 years or even charged the mound or started a fight. I mean, it's just crazy to imagine where he came from, the Deep South, and to the Jim Crow era, and from the streets of Fairfield and Birmingham, all the way to the Polo Grounds in New York, and then Candlestick Park, Seal Stadium, Candlestick Park, and spent most of his life in the Bay Area. But yeah, I mean, I guess I took that in kind of a precious personal way, that it was sort of my job to relay and share what Willie's world was all about, from newspaper articles to the book, but always if something was pressing or important socially or athletically or anywhere, I sort of asked him, and he was open with his thoughts. And I felt kind of a responsibility to make that happen. And I took that with a high degree of just, emotion and thoughtfulness, and just, it's just maybe kind of hard to explain, but but being there with him, you always had to pinch yourself because he trusted you, and he didn't trust many people. Never had an agent, and there was no free agency, and there's nobody in the clubhouse who knew anything about investing. So it was hard on him at the time to trust people, and eventually he trusted me, and the project of a lifetime, really, and a friendship that it's just so hard to explain, but so warm to my heart.
This is now illegal in baseball. This is now illegal in baseball. And this is now illegal in baseball. MLB has just implemented some of the most drastic rule changes in modern sports history overnight. Rules that will cause more action, more hits, more web gems, and pretty much everything that MLB fans like, all condensed in a shorter period of time. It's also going to cause complete chaos. Pitchers like Max Scherzer have already found loopholes and have manipulated this rule so much that MLB has had to make changes within the first month. An unprecedented amount of umpires have quit, and these rules are probably a big reason why. Some players and managers hate them and have been ejected because of them.
Well, John, I saw that you wrote a recent article about the new rules in baseball, and I know that you're in favor of the 6-inning minimum for pitchers. My question to you is this: do you find that the new rules, though, are kind of off-putting to like longtime fans like myself and Marko?
Well, I might say the opposite. That they're trying to recreate the game that you grew up enjoying. Analytics has slowed the pace and created these wacky shifts, and we don't see the line drive base hits as much as the deep fly balls. And it seems like baseball's trying to right the wrong, if they are wrong. I'm not saying analytics are right or wrong, but in this case, according to Major League Baseball, they brought in all these rules to speed up the game, like yesteryear, like to have infielders play the positions that they were meant to play like yesteryear without the exaggerated shifts, and to bring back the running game like yesteryear. So at first, when I heard about that 6-inning thing, I mean, there are qualifiers. You can take them out after 100 pitches or 4 runs or more, or if the guy's hurt, but you have to go on the injured list, which is 15 days now for pitchers. So I figured there's no way that I would agree to that. But the more I thought about it, you know what? Pitchers are burning themselves out in April and May by going with the high velo, max velo, all out effort, and everybody's on the injured list. The so-called best rotation in baseball. I mean, they traded one, and another's on the injured list, and 2 of them actually on the injured list with Hicks and Robbie Ray. But it's like, I mean, can we put an end to all these injuries somehow? It wasn't like this when everybody paced themselves thinking 9 innings. Now it's let's go as hard as I can and just roll the dice. I'll either be out by the 4th inning or injured by the 3rd. And what good is that? It's as fans, you want to see starting pitchers develop. You want to see more Logan Webbs. You don't want to see openers. You don't want to see bullpenning. You don't want to see that stuff.
Right.
You want to see the true starter and maybe 2 or 3 relievers, not 5 or 6.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed, and you know this because you being a longtime baseball writer, is look at the Baseball Writers Association scorebook. I think there's lines for 5 pitchers on there.
Yeah.
And then I think it was posted recently. I can't remember which game it was, but somebody's I know what it was. The Danny Jansen, the gentleman who was playing for Boston. I think he got traded to Toronto, something like that. But the game was suspended, and when it resumed months later, he's the first baseball player to play in the same game. But the writer's scorebook that was used, that was sent to the Hall, is so muddled because he's got all these pitchers and he can't fit it in the pitching lines. And I was going to say real quickly, when I think of starting pitchers I really miss in baseball, and you can remember this name, John, not to make you sound old, but one of my favorite guys was Frank Tanana. This guy could not break a pane of glass. And the old joke by Mike Krukow was he threw 90 in the 70s and he threw 70 in the 90s.
Yeah. Right.
This guy was awesome, though. He was great. I loved watching Frank Tanana because he could barely throw 80-something miles an hour, but he got somewhere in the neighborhood of the 200 wins. I think he got around 240 wins in his career. A great starting pitcher, was very durable, but he was kind of a junk baller, and I miss guys like that. Another example is Jamie Moyer. Jamie Moyer didn't throw higher than 80-ish, and He lasted until he was 49 years old. And Greg Maddux, as we all know, what a great pitcher he was, and he barely threw higher than 88 in the prime of his career. So I agree with you on that. I mean, I would like to see guys come back more, because initially when the radar gun came out, you were interested in seeing what a guy could throw. And if a guy did throw hard in the upper 90s, ooh, but now everybody throws in the high 90s. So it's become kind of, it's not a big deal anymore.
Yeah, it's like going to the golf range and just using your driver and looking at the screen behind you and see how far it went. And I've been guilty of that. It's like, well, I'm not going to use my approach shots or, forget the putting green, and I'm just going to try to whack it as far as I can go for a personal best. But it doesn't do you any good on the golf course, because you got to play 18 holes, not just 18 drivers. So it's same with baseball. You talk to these guys, they all look up on the board to see what the velo is. Mm-hmm. And if they're down a notch or two, they're reminded about it in post-game interviews. Like, hey, you were down a notch or two with your velo. Right. Like, really? I mean, like Marshall was all over the place with all his pitches. Sometimes he'd throw hard, sometimes he'd throw soft. But being down a notch or two, like it was a bad thing. And, that's the mindset these days. That's what kids are doing in Little League. I saw Brian Murphy of KNBR. I went and saw a game or two of his, this all-star team that advanced that was really good. And they've got the metrics, they got the analytics, and, the next step is high school, and the next step is college, the next step is pros for very few. But that's what they look at. That's what you see in spring training with all the machinery and technology behind every mound throughout the desert. You see pitching coaches and pitchers track what they're doing with the spin and the velocity. And I just wonder if owners and GMs are going to tire of spending so much money on pitchers that don't last 6 months.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I really think these analytics have gone overboard, and I think it's really killing baseball and my Generation X of fans who grew up with this sport, especially here in Northern California. We had the 49ers that got prevalent in the 80s, and the Warriors. We never had hockey until the Sharks came into the 90s, right? So baseball for a lot of us was our sport that we grew up with and became passionate about. And now I see all these just like abstract stats like WAR. Like, I'm sorry, like how can you create a stat that's based on an abstract thing like, well, a potential win? I mean, again, this is a team sport. This isn't like tennis, where it's individually. You can't say a pitcher's worth this many wins or this right fielder's worth this many wins. I just fail to just understand where they're coming from with these numbers, and I think that's so now prevalent in this game that's all people think about. They look at WAR, or in the case of pitching, it's like, how fast can this guy throw? Like, we don't see pitches like the split finger fastball thrown anymore, the knuckleball, or the screwball stuff that I grew up with in the 80s watching, even into the early 90s. And so I just want to know, where you stand on all these now new abstract stats and the way analytics has, to me, been hurting the game. And then again, I'm not a fan of these pitch clocks. One thing that I loved about my childhood was going to Candlestick Park and being there for 3-4 hours. That was my cathedral. I loved if a game went extra innings. I was all about that. And now they're trying to speed up a game that, to me, is the most mental team sport. At least it used to be. It used to be like a chess match, but now they have the designated hitter in both leagues. You took out all the strategy. It's all gone in the National League. As far as, should you pinch hit for this guy, the pitcher, take him out or whatever, that's all gone now.
Yeah, and speaking of the designated hitter, I was vehemently opposed to the National League adopting that, because I thought it was just perfectly fine. Each league has a different set of rules. What's wrong with that?
Right.
But then over time, general managers told pitchers, don't even work on your hitting. So we got these embarrassing at bats. I mean, there was no pride or athleticism or even attempts at being good at the plate. Just go over there and stand for 3 strikes. It's like, that's not baseball. It's not what these guys grew up with. See what they could do. And if they get hurt pulling a hammy, rounding first, well, work on getting in baseball shape, not just pitching shape. So anyway, that's an old argument. That ship has sailed, and every level, internationally, locally, collegially, everybody has a DH. So it's not even a thing anymore. Curse you, Charlie Finley.
Yeah.
But here we are, and it's a whole new world. And analytics, it took over. There's some good, there's some bad, and you just don't want to lose. I remember that the best managing job ever I saw was the 1993 Giants with Dusty Baker in his first year. Everything he did was perfect. It worked. They won 103 pre-wild card, so they didn't get to the playoffs. And we'd ask him after games, said, why'd you make that change? It worked, but why'd you think of that? He always said, I had a hunch. And you never see a manager saying that, I have a hunch. If a manager now says I have a hunch, he's going to be called into the GM's office and chewed out, because you're not supposed to have a hunch. You're supposed to pre-plan every moment of every game and anticipate everything so that you're calculated throughout every strategy that you could muster over 9 innings. And that's just takes away the feel of the game. I don't think there's anything wrong with the feel of the game when pitchers are taken out after 4 innings because they face the lineup twice and they're not trusted to face them a third time. Well, work on that. Make them good enough so they can. Don't pull them because you can. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I agree with that. Some of it is nonsense and just to play the odds. And Gabe Kapler was here for 4 years, and we saw things that we had never seen. Ryan, remember that time where he ran up the score with stolen bases, then explained afterward that we don't believe in unwritten rules. There are no unwritten rules, so we can run at any time because that's who we are. And it's just like blew me away. It's like, what? I mean, tell that to Madison Bumgarner,
right?
And other players who embrace the history of the game and the way the game is played. I think we need to ask the players more. What do you feel about the rules? And don't leave it up to a 6-man committee that is associated with the union. Survey the entire major leagues and say, what would you like as the rule? They know more than we do. They know more than the GMs and the president of baseball ops and the owners and even the managers on how this game should be played. And maybe we ought to listen to the players more rather than the folks who run the computer boards.
Now, you make a good point. I'll say this, in addition to that, you did mention in your story about how a guy like Kyle Harrison never threw that many pitches. Then he comes up to the big leagues last year and he threw 90 pitches in 3 of his 4 starts, but he's only surpassed 6 innings once, I believe, or something like that, or twice. So yeah, there's a lot of meddling that's been going on, and it starts from the time these guys are little kids. I mean, they're taught not to pitch very deep in the games. I remember covering a baseball game back in I think it was in the late 2000s when it was Gio Gonzalez pitching for the A's. He goes 5 innings and he tells us at his locker that he did his job. I tried not to laugh, but that's what pitchers are taught nowadays. They're taught to go 5 innings, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Yeah, 5 innings is the minimum to qualify for a win, and that should be your mindset. And I think that's why Logan Webb is a liked pitcher, because not only is he a throwback, but he's a throwback in every sense of the word. I mean, he can actually throw a quick game without the pitch clock, and he was doing so.
Right.
I mean, he's the one guy that could pitch a game for the Giants in 2 hours and 15 minutes, and he would say for him that was too long. So, they really need to figure out a way. And I do appreciate what they're trying to do. I just feel it's just so artificial. They're trying to get the game back to where it used to be. And I know what Marko's saying as well about the strategy of baseball, but there was a time where you could do all that and play a game in 2 hours and 30 minutes, maybe 2 hours and 45 minutes, and everything had the right flow to it.
Artificial is a good word. Artificial is a good word. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right.
This is Giants manager Bob Melvin, and you're watching Bay Area Sports Wrap.
With no problem. Runners at the corners, nobody out. Nothing like an 8th inning uprising. JT with a base hit. Marko scores. Haniger to second. 5-2 ball game. He's going to bring the tying run to the plate.
Now 3 hits in a row.
There you go, line drive. Into the Lumbering home is Haniger. Standing to third, Turner. Here come the Mariners. It's 5-3. Here in the 8th inning. Leo, base hit. 5-4 ball game. 5 consecutive knocks here in the 8th. And still nobody out. Fisted. Got a chance. That is going to work indeed. Rojas coming around. He's tying the ball game. It's 5-5 in the 8th. Luke Raley. What a comeback.
Feet away for winning the game.
And here's Leo Rivas.
There it is. Ball game. Leo Rivas, everybody, wins it for the Mariners. 6-5.
I just want to ask you really, if I could, about the Giants season. I mean, it looks like everybody thought it would be great that Bob Melvin came back to replace Gabe Kapler and that he would kind of be the missing piece in a way, sort of, kind of being a sort of a wizard, if you will, and being able to make all the right moves. But it seems like he's done the exact opposite. And he's made some moves in, whether it's pitching or, one that comes up to mind is that game, that the 2 games the Giants had in extra innings against the Braves. The first night with Mike Yastrzemski, he has a Yastrzemski swing away. Nothing happens. The Giants lose that game. The next night, he's got Tyler Fitzgerald trying to bunt. Fitzgerald fails on the bunt, then is called for interference. The runner has to stay at second. The Giants fail to score in that game as well, and they end up losing both those extra inning games. They lose 3 out of 4 to Atlanta, and now they're kind of basically wallowing, barely in contention for the wild card. How would you assess their season and Melvin's managing this year?
Yeah, and Tyler Rogers 6 straight hits.
Yes, right. I forgot about that one.
Right.
Kept him in there, and suddenly the game is tied. Then they went to the closer, and it was lights out. So, yeah, Tyler Rogers, goofy contact equals hits. I mean, that's just the way it is. And there's a lot of goofy contact, and you find some grass out there. That's 6 straight hits. So that was unfortunate. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I went into spring training thinking this team has 0 chance to make the playoffs, and then sure enough, in spring training, they pick up 4 established ball players, including a co-ace and Blake Snell and Matt Chapman, Bay Area legend over across the Bay, with what he did defensively and with his power. Didn't really match it in Toronto. And even Soler at the DH, it's like, okay, this guy's going to hit 30 bombs. And all of them, and Ahmed, the shortstop, they didn't really have anybody because Luciano just has not proven to be. I think Farhan Zaidi prematurely publicly said that at the end of last season, we're gonna go with Luciano as an everyday player. We're gonna give him every opportunity next season, and he just stunk it up in spring training. I was watching him take ground balls. He just, the footwork and the handwork. It just, all these years playing shortstop, he still doesn't get it. So I don't think he'll ever be a major league shortstop on an everyday basis. Maybe they could turn him into a super utility guy who can maybe DH and play the corners and hit for power. I don't know. But anyway, so they pick up these 4 guys, and I think, okay, now they got something. But I mistakenly believed that missing spring training would be okay for some of these guys. It wasn't. They all started off poorly on both sides of the ball. Snell got hurt, and Soler never figured it out until the very end. And so they were very fortunate, if not lucky, that those players came to them, because nobody else would sign them to a bigger deal. And the Giants had flexibility on the payroll. So good for Farhan Zaidi. It was a complete team, but it's like a rotisserie league. You just don't throw a bunch of guys together and become a team overnight. And that's what they tried to do, and it just didn't work. And then over time, we realized, and Soler, I guess, was replaceable because they just got rid of him at the trade deadline. And then they said, well, this is a move to go to Luciano, and that lasted 2 weeks. So it's like you scratch your head and say, what is going on here? And because you just don't get what they're doing. The roster construction just isn't cutting it with that offense. It seems like they're down 3 or 4 to nothing by the 5th inning every game. They just don't put rallies together, and runners in scoring position, batting averages are just awful across the board. So it's like, well, what do you do? And I guess early on we realized, hey, this is a 500 team with the veterans, and now we're learning, hey, this is a 500 team with the young guys. So why keep the veterans? So one by one, they're easing the young guys in and knocking the old guys out. And we're going to see that more and more. And then, there's no reason for Conforto to come back. His contract is going to be up, and Wilmer and Estrada, and, these guys are put on waivers. And it's like, well, we kind of given up, kind of throwing in the white. I mean, it's and then you ask about Bob Melvin, and I wonder how much of his moves are pre-calculated under Farhan Zaidi, and I wonder if it would be a better situation if he could just control the entire game if he doesn't do that. I'm not sure exactly how every strategic move is carried out during 9 innings, how much of it is him in the moment versus how much of it is orchestrated in the hours before the first pitch. If it's the latter, I would suggest, well, let's see what Bob Melvin can do in his own element. So yeah, it's tricky because, Melvin and Brian Price and Matt Williams and Pat Burrell, the fan base got really excited. It's not just this extreme way of Farhan and Kapler behind the scenes with the mad scientists. Yeah, they got 107 wins in 21, but otherwise they have not had a winning season or playoff season. So was that the aberration, or everybody to a man had a career year? And I'm talking Posey and Crawford and Belt and all those guys. Longoria even played well. So, and they had pitching and defense. So, but maybe that was a mistake to believe that could happen again, and they didn't really beef up that roster the following year, and we haven't, seen much growth since. So I don't know what they're going to do in the offseason. It's going to be a fascinating thing after extending Farhan and giving this new deal to Melvin. Ownership, just like the fan base, must be fed up with this 500 stuff. I mean, every year you're just right around 500, and this is the San Francisco Giants of Willie Mays when they won 97 games in the 60s and went home because there were no wild card, and Will Clark and Mitchell with the World Series, and the early 2000s with the World Series, and then 10, 12, and 14 under Sabian. And this is a long stretch for a big market team and a major payroll, and they just haven't won any sweepstakes with the big boys of free agency. And I think the first thing they got to do after the season is come to grips that they are not going to sign Juan Soto. No. Forget about it, because nobody's going to sign here like that. It just hasn't happened. So move on and try to build it early in the offseason instead of waiting for these big guys to sign late.
No, I agree, John. And, I thought you had the best question to Farhan at that trade deadline press conference when you said, why didn't you improve the offense when you had a chance to do it? And of course, he gives the, flippy flop, he shows you everything, but it tells you nothing. Right. And so, and again, with Blake Snell, with pitchers, they are the entity that needs to have a spring training. And when they don't, you see what happens. He wasn't ready. He gets hurt because he wasn't ready. And now that he's finally had that chance to heal and get established, he's been pitching lights out, pitches his first no-hitter. So, I like that you called him out on that, Farhan, that is, with not improving this team's offense. And you're right. They're not going to get Sotos. They're not going to get the Judges. They have to build within and get the next Ramoses and the next Fitzgeralds for this team going forward. And we'll see if that happens. And I know you'll be there, when it all plays out.
Yeah. What do you guys think they should do?
I think they should just personally, pitching wise, you can get pitchers to come here, high price free agents like a Blake Snell, Robbie Rays, and those guys. As far as hitters, they got to do better job scouting, especially some of the local talent here at the colleges, and get hitters that can spray base hits and not try to get for the home run. You're not going to hit 40 home runs in that ballpark. Barry Bonds was the only exception to that rule.
Right. And I think personally what they could do, John, the only way you could try to make the ball fly a little bit better, as you recall during COVID, is close the port walk. I mean, if they close the port walk, it changes the wind flow. And I got to be honest. I mean, I know people, it's nice gimmick. Fans can watch the game for free. You can't see anything out there from the port walk. It's a terrible view. Close the port walk.
Close it up.
Yeah,
Well,
close
it was closed on and off after
Right.
COVID,
Right.
after the pandemic, right?
Well, actually, it was definitely closed during COVID, and it helped guys like Alex Dickerson. He was able to hit more home runs because there was more airflow because they closed off the port walk. The wind wasn't blowing through and affecting the flight of the ball. That's my theory. I think.
Yeah, isn't that funny? I mean, you and I were talking to the A's at their Hall of Fame ceremony a couple of weeks ago, and hearing from Canseco talk about how before Mount Davis, it was almost impossible nighttime to hit the ball a long way. I mean, McGuire and Canseco did it. Nobody else did. But during the day, we played fair. But then once they put on Mount Davis, Terry Steinbach told me I went from like 15 home runs to 35. Right. And it's isn't that amazing how the surrounding, the construction and the wind currents could alter the number of home runs by a team?
Well, yeah, but of course you remember Candlestick. I mean, I don't. Obviously, neither one of us remember Candlestick when it was an open air ballpark, but when they enclosed it, it made the wind swirl instead of just blowing. I guess it used to blow left to right, I believe, right?
Yeah, well, Mays talked about the jet stream that went out to right center, because the early Candlestick days, it was almost impossible to hit a fly ball over the left field wall. You had to hit a line drive, and that's kind of rare unless you're McCovey hitting it to right field. But Mays hit his high and far. McCovey hit his, knocked off the second baseman's head on the way to the wall. But yeah, so that's how he developed that opposite field stroke, which he kind of taught Kevin Mitchell and loved Posey for it. He loved Posey's opposite field approach, because why not use the whole field? I mean, Mays could do that in the Polo Grounds because center field went forever. He could pull some balls down the left field line and get a home run on a ball that didn't go 300 feet. But then Seal Stadium was huge. He didn't hit many home runs there.
Right.
And then Candlestick Park talk about some wacky ballparks that he played in. He still got 660. But yeah, you're right. It's almost like, why are the A's a better offensive team than the Giants? That's what I'm trying to figure out. With their payroll, they hit more home runs and they score a lot more. And the Giants, whose salaries are bigger, they're more name players. They've been around more. They get paid more. And they just can't hit with runners in scoring position. So something's missing, whether it's, Matt Chapman has to hit seventh. He can't hit 3, 4, 5, on a team that's going to be very good. He needs to hit further down there. He strikes out too much, and let him figure it out down there and take a little stress off him. But it's Ramos is a find. It's wonderful that he's finally developed. And you're right. A couple more of those guys, they need a 3, 4, 5 to compete with these other teams because they don't have the athleticism to run the bases or play defense, except maybe, some of these young guys they haven't in the past. They're last in steals, and you just like to see that athleticism. I mean, like the Diamondbacks in recent years and some of these other teams that come in and swipe 5 or 6 bases. You say, my goodness. I mean, some of the analytic minded people say, well, we don't want to steal bases. We want to hit doubles and home runs. That's fine, but you got to pay for those guys, or you got to develop those guys. And, we're not seeing enough of them in San Francisco, right?
No, we're not, unfortunately. And John, I'd love to keep you on longer, but unfortunately we're running out of time, but we'd love to have you on again. We'll talk about the A's. And I think it comes down to the S word, scouting. The A's are scouting much better than the Giants. That's the bottom line. They've got a lot better. They've got more dynamic players. The A's remind me of the Montreal Expos. No matter how many players the A's keep dumping off, they keep finding new talent. I mean, the Expos did that until the very day they had to leave Montreal. And the A's, I give them credit. They're doing the same thing. I'm going to miss the fact that the A's are going to be leaving Oakland. We'd love to have you back on again, John. Maybe in a month we could talk about the A's and their unfortunate legacy of moving to Sacramento, which is really a travesty for the game of baseball. But, we love your insight and knowledge, your passion for the game. It's obvious you love baseball. I mean, we talked for about 40 minutes, and it just seems like we talked for 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. So, no, we all do. I mean, that's why we dig it. It's some of us work, right, Marko?
That's right.
But John, thank you again so much. We really appreciate you, John, for being on Bay Area Sports Wrap. Love to have you on again. And again, from Marko Ukalovic and myself, Ryan Leong from Bay Area Sports Wrap, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.